It rises almost 2,000 meters straight out of the Atlantic Ocean. There is no gradual approach, no coastal plain, no gentle beach, just black volcanic rock, climbing almost vertically from the water until it disappears into cloud. It has no natural beaches worth mentioning. It has no rivers at sea level. It has almost no flat ground. The island is essentially one enormous volcanic mountain that erupted from the ocean floor 5 million years ago. And yet, 270,000 people live here. They have built cities on cliffs. They carved 2,500 kilometers of water channels into the face of the mountain to bring water down from the peaks to the farms. They turned the impossibility of the terrain into the most productive agricultural system in the Atlantic. 600 kilometers off the coast of Morocco. 1,000 kilometers from the Portuguese mainland. One island. 741 square kilometers. A maximum elevation of 1,862 meters. Madeira is not a flat island with a mountain on it. Madeira is a mountain. The island is the mountain. There is almost no distinction between the two. From the sea, it looks like a wall. Black basalt cliffs rising hundreds of meters. Green forest above the cliffs. Cloud above the forest. And somewhere above the cloud, the peaks of a volcanic range that has been cooling for 5 million years. The first Portuguese sailors who saw it in 1419 named it Madeira, the Portuguese word for wood, because the entire island was covered in ancient laurel forest, so dense, so dark, so deep that it blocked out the sky. That forest, the laurisilva, is the largest surviving area of ancient laurel forest on Earth. It has existed, largely unchanged, for 15 million years. UNESCO World Heritage since 1999. It predates the island it grows on. The seeds arrived before the rock finished cooling. This documentary is about what happens when human beings decide to build their lives inside a 15-million-year-old forest on the side of a 5-million-year-old volcano in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and make it work. This is Madeira, the island that refused to be uninhabitable and became, against every geographic logic, one of the most alive places on Earth. Madeira did not form on a tectonic plate boundary. It formed on a hot spot, a plume of superheated mantle material rising through the middle of the African plate and punching through the ocean floor. The same mechanism that created Hawaii. The same mechanism that created the Canary Islands. A column of heat rising from 2,900 kilometers below the surface. Melting rock, forcing it upward, erupting on the ocean floor, building slowly, layer by layer, until, after millions of years, it breaks the surface. Madeira's main eruptions ended approximately 700,000 years ago. The island has been cooling ever since. Erosion has done the rest of the work. Rain, and Madeira receives enormous quantities of rain on its northern slopes, has carved the basalt into ravines, waterfalls, and valleys of extraordinary depth. The result is a terrain of almost theatrical drama. The highest peak, Pico Ruivo, stands 1,862 meters above sea level. The sea is 200 meters below it, in places virtually straight down. The vertical distance between the summit and the water is compressed into a horizontal distance of just a few kilometers. Stand on Pico Ruivo on a clear day, and you can see the ocean in every direction. The clouds pass below you. The island is so steep that the clouds form halfway up its slopes and cannot climb further. Above the cloud line, permanent sun. Below it, rain, mist, green. The north side of the island and the south side are effectively two different climates. The mountain intercepts the trade winds from the northeast. The north coast, rain, forest, dramatic waterfalls. The south coast, sun, warmth, Funchal. The same island, two completely different worlds divided by a ridge of volcanic rock. This is the geological fact that made human settlement possible. The mountain catches the rain. The rain fills the streams and springs at altitude. And the people, when they arrived in 1419, found a way to bring that water down to the dry southern coast, where the sun was warm enough to grow almost anything. When the first Portuguese settlers arrived on Madeira in the 1420s, they faced an immediate and seemingly insurmountable problem. The northern slopes had water in abundance. The southern slopes, where the climate was warm enough to grow sugarcane, had almost none. The mountains between them were nearly vertical. Their solution was one of the most ambitious hydraulic engineering projects in the history of the pre-industrial world. They built levadas, narrow irrigation channels, perfectly level, carved into the rock of the mountain, following the contour lines of the terrain for kilometers upon kilometers, carrying water from the wet north to the dry south. The total length of Madeira's levada system is 2,500 kilometers. Built across 5 centuries, beginning in the 1400s and continuing through the 20th century, it is the longest irrigation system in the world relative to the size of the territory it serves. Some levadas run through tunnels bored directly into the mountain. Some run along paths so narrow that the maintenance workers who walk them must press their backs against the rock face and inch sideways above a 100-meter drop. They were built largely by enslaved workers, enslaved Africans and enslaved Guanche people from the Canary Islands. Men and women who carved water channels into vertical cliff faces without safety equipment in exchange for nothing. The water that flows through the levadas today follows channels that enslaved people cut by hand 500 years ago. The route has not changed. The water has not stopped. Today, the levadas serve 2 purposes. They still irrigate the farms of southern Madeira, and they have become, completely unexpectedly, one of the most remarkable walking trail systems in the world. The maintenance paths, built alongside the levadas, now attract hundreds of thousands of hikers annually. Paths through ancient laurel forest, paths along cliff edges above the Atlantic, paths through tunnels cut in the 15th century, still dark, still dripping, still carrying water that falls on the northern peaks and arrives at southern farms. A 500-year-old irrigation system has become a 21st century tourism destination. Built by enslaved hands, walked today by tourists from 50 countries, still working, still flowing. On the night of August 13th, 2010, wildfires broke out across the hillsides above Funchal. Madeira had been experiencing extreme drought. The laurel forest, normally perpetually damp, had dried. The eucalyptus plantations on the southern slopes, introduced in the 20th century for timber, were dangerously dry. The fires burned for days. They killed 3 people. They destroyed over 1,600 hectares. They came within meters of residential neighborhoods. The sky above Funchal turned orange. Ash fell on the harbor. The mountain glowed at night. But 2010 was not the first time. In February 2010, just 6 months before the fires, Madeira had been struck by catastrophic flash floods. 42 people killed, 650 families left homeless, entire roads swept into the sea, bridges destroyed. The island's infrastructure, built on steep terrain over 600 years, reduced in hours by water moving faster than it was ever designed to handle. Fire in summer, flood in winter. The same mountain that makes Madeira beautiful is also the reason it remains dangerous. Within 2 years, every road was rebuilt. Within 3, the tourism numbers had returned to pre-disaster levels. Within 5, the fire-scarred hillsides had begun to green again. The Madeiran response to catastrophe is the same response the channel has documented everywhere it has gone. You rebuild. You rebuild to look like what was there before, because what was there before was worth keeping. The Monte Toboggan, a wicker basket on wooden runners, pushed downhill on cobblestone streets by men in straw hats and white linen who steer with their rubber-soled boots. This is not a tourist novelty, or rather, it is now, but it began as a practical solution to an engineering problem. In the 19th century, the Monte hillside above Funchal was a residential neighborhood with no road connection to the harbor. The terrain was too steep for horse carts. The solution? Wicker sleds on cobblestone channels, guided by workers who had spent their careers learning the exact body weight to apply on each curve of each specific street. The problem was solved. The solution outlasted the problem. The workers are still there, because Madeira does not abandon its solutions. It turns them into identity. Madeira's geography forced its people to become terraced farmers. There is no flat land, so they cut the mountain into steps. Thousands of terraces, climbing the volcanic slopes, supported by stone walls built by hand, watered by the levadas. On those terraces, in a subtropical climate that receives year-round sun on the south face and year-round rain on the north, they grow things that should not grow this far north. Bananas, passion fruit, sugarcane, avocado, mango, and grapes. Madeira wine, one of the oldest named wines in the world, mentioned by Shakespeare in 2 plays, used to toast the signing of the American Declaration of Independence in 1776. George Washington's favorite wine. It is fortified with grape spirit to stop fermentation. Then it is heated deliberately. In a process called estufagem, the wine is exposed to heat for months, sometimes years, which would ruin any other wine on earth. For Madeira wine, it creates a flavor profile that can last centuries. Bottles from the 1800s are still drinkable, still improving. The oldest documented bottle of Madeira wine dates from 1715, over 300 years old, still considered one of the greatest wines ever made. A wine that can survive 3 centuries was made by people who had learned to build everything for permanence. Because on Madeira, permanence is the only answer to a geography that keeps trying to wash your work into the sea. The word most visitors use when they first see Madeira from the air is impossible. Not impossible in the sense of threatening. Impossible in the sense of, This cannot actually look like this. This cannot be real. The eastern tip of the island, the Ponta de São Lourenço Peninsula, is bare volcanic rock. Red and black and orange basalt extending into the Atlantic. The erosion has stripped everything away. What is left is pure geology, exposed to the open Atlantic, with no softening of forest or farmland. It looks like a different planet. Drive 40 minutes west from there, and you reach the Laurisilva forest. Ancient, dark, 15 million years old. Trees draped in moss and lichen. Ferns the size of small trees themselves. A silence so complete, it feels like the island before any human being arrived. In the mountains above Funchal, there are pools fed entirely by lavada water. Rabasal, the 25 Fontes, where the water is so clear you can see the individual rocks 15 meters below the surface. On the north coast, at Porto Moniz, natural lava pools have formed in the volcanic rock at the ocean's edge. Madeira has no natural beaches worth mentioning, but it has something better. Ocean pools carved by the same volcanic eruptions that built the island, filled every tide with water so cold and clear it photographs like the Caribbean and feels like the North Atlantic, which is exactly what it is. The beauty of Madeira is not decorative, it is structural. It is the direct result of 5 million years of geological violence, 600 years of human engineering, and the specific decision made by every generation that has lived here to treat the difficulty of the terrain not as a problem to be solved, but as a material to be worked with. Madeira is 741 square kilometers of volcanic mountain in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It has been inhabited for 600 years. It has no flat land, no natural beaches, no rivers at sea level, no mineral wealth, no strategic military importance in the modern world, and yet it has 2,500 kilometers of water channels that have not stopped flowing since the 15th century. It has a wine that has been aging since 1715 and is still considered extraordinary. It has a forest that has been growing for 15 million years and is the largest surviving subtropical laurel forest on Earth. It has a people who, when the mountain caught fire and the rain washed their roads into the sea, rebuilt every time. Without exception, there is a concept the Madeirans have about their island. It has no single word, but it appears in the way they describe what they built here. The lavadas were not built because the terrain allowed it. They were built because the terrain demanded it. The terraced farms were not built because the mountain was convenient. They were built because the mountain was the only thing available. The wine was not made this way because it was the easiest method. It was made this way because the conditions of this island turned a problem, heat, humidity, altitude, into the defining characteristic of the finest product they could make. The Madeirans did not work around their geography. They worked through it. They took the impossibility and used it as an instruction. The difference between a place you survive and a place you build is not the quality of the terrain. It is the quality of the attention you give to what the terrain is actually telling you. Madeira listened for 600 years, and the island it built in response is, by almost any measure, one of the most beautiful places that has ever existed. Tell me something in the comments. The lavadas, 2,500 kilometers of water channels built by hand over 5 centuries. Would you walk them? Because every person I have ever asked that question either says yes immediately or wants to know how far the drop is first. And both answers tell you everything about who you are. If this documentary made you see Madeira differently, subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week, we go to the places the world forgot, and we stay long enough to understand them. You just watched how people build an extraordinary life on a mountain with no flat ground. Now watch what happens on an island where the ships only come when the weather allows. And sometimes they do not come at all. The Faroe Islands is on your screen right now. Or stay in the Atlantic and watch the story of 9 islands sitting on top of 3 tectonic plates that have never agreed on a direction. The eruption that buried a coastline, and the people who came back to farm the ash. The Azores is on your screen now. And if these documentaries are making you realize how little you know about the places that are closest to you, every week we add a new one. Mongolia, Alaska, Iceland, Canada, the places where the world is still raw. Subscribe and keep watching.